On a summer evening in July 1962, a teenager named Michael Castellano stood on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles with his guitar. At 17 years old, Michael had positioned himself at the corner of Sunset and Vine at 4:30 in the afternoon, hoping to earn tips from passers-by. His guitar case lay open before him, containing $347. Most of his own money placed there strategically to suggest that other people had already given donations. In reality, he hadn't received a single tip from strangers. For the past 2 hours, Michael had sung continuously while hundreds of people passed by. Most paid him no attention whatsoever. Some glanced briefly before moving on. A few actually laughed or made discouraging comments, telling him to stop blocking the sidewalk and get a real job instead of wasting time with music. Michael persisted despite the harsh reactions. The song he chose to perform was That's Amore, the same tune his father used to play every Sunday morning back when his father was still alive. Michael had been practicing that particular song for 6 months, yet he still couldn't execute the high note cleanly. Every time he reached that part, his voice would crack, and he could see people in the crowd smirking and whispering to each other. Shame would wash over him, making his face burn. 3 months earlier, tragedy had struck Michael's family. His father, Anthony Castellano, had suffered a sudden heart attack while eating dinner. One moment he was laughing at something Michael's sister had said, and the next moment he collapsed. The paramedics' words, "I'm sorry," marked the end of an era. Anthony was only 52 years old. Anthony had worked as a plumber his entire adult life. Though he never accumulated wealth, he always ensured his family had what they needed. He possessed one dream that had nothing to do with pipes and plumbing work. He wanted to perform as a singer. Unfortunately, that dream never materialized. Marriage, children, bills, and responsibilities consumed his time and energy, leaving no room for musical pursuits. Every Sunday morning, though, Anthony would place his Dean Martin records on the turntable. Songs like That's Amore, Everybody Loves Somebody, and Ain't That a Kick in the Head would fill the house. He'd sing along enthusiastically, his voice loud and off-key, but genuinely joyful. Michael would observe his father during these moments. This rugged man who spent his weekdays fixing broken toilets and clearing clogged drains would transform into someone different, lighter, and somehow freer. When Michael would tease him about his terrible singing voice, Anthony would smile and respond with wisdom that Michael didn't fully grasp at the time. "I know I'm not good, but I'm happily bad at this. That's the secret, Mickey. Choose to be poorly happy instead of miserably excellent." Now Michael understood his father's meaning completely. After the funeral service, Michael searched through his father's possessions and discovered the Dean Martin record collection, each album worn and scratched from repeated listening. More significantly, he found a hidden notebook tucked inside Anthony's toolbox. The notebook contained song lyrics written in his father's handwriting. Some were transcriptions of Dean Martin's compositions, while others appeared to be original works, incomplete and rough around the edges but filled with authentic emotion. The final page contained a single sentence that would change Michael's life. "I ran out of time. Don't make my mistake." Michael stared at those words for what felt like an eternity. Then he made a definitive choice. He would pursue singing. This decision was especially significant because Michael had never performed publicly before, had never received formal vocal training, and had never even sung in front of an audience. Despite these limitations, Michael took action. He purchased a used guitar from a pawn shop and taught himself 3 basic chords using a library book. He spent countless hours practicing in his garage, repeating scales and songs until his fingers became raw and painful from pressing the strings. His mother didn't understand his commitment. She expressed concern about their financial situation. The insurance payout from his father's death barely covered the funeral expenses, and they needed income, not a hobby. Michael assured her he would find employment, but insisted on pursuing music first. He explained his father wanted to sing, but never got the opportunity. "I'm going to give his dream a chance," Michael told her. Tears filled his mother's eyes, but she didn't protest further. Michael began performing at small venues to build experience. He played at neighborhood gatherings, his sister's graduation ceremony, and a church talent competition where he finished in last place. The responses were polite but discouraging. People would say that was nice in a tone that clearly meant the opposite. However, Michael continued because his father's words from that notebook sustained him. Don't make my mistake. After several months of small performances, Michael decided to attempt something more ambitious. On July 12, 1962, he chose to perform on Sunset Boulevard in the heart of Hollywood. If he was truly serious about music, he needed to discover whether complete strangers would stop to listen, whether his voice could penetrate the noise and chaos of the city. He positioned himself at 4:30 in the afternoon with his guitar case open and just $3 of his own money inside. He understood the psychology behind this tactic. People tend to tip more generously when they see that others have already contributed. Michael's first hour on the street was extraordinarily difficult. He performed 15 different songs. His voice sounded unsteady and uncertain. His guitar was slightly out of tune. His fingers throbbed from the pressure of the strings. Despite his efforts, strangers contributed nothing. People walked past as though he didn't exist. Some were polite enough to ignore him completely, while others were actively cruel. A group of young teenagers made fun of him, saying he sounded like a suffering animal. An elderly woman stopped specifically to discourage him, suggesting that singing wasn't his calling. A well-dressed businessman actually dropped a penny into his case while making a cutting remark about purchasing talent. The second hour proved even worse. Michael's voice began failing him. Physical exhaustion, nervous anxiety, and overwhelming embarrassment took their toll. He was performing That's Amore when he reached the problematic high note. His voice emerged flat and strained instead of clear and strong. A couple passing by actually laughed at him, making a cruel joke about putting him out of his misery. Michael's eyes began to water, not from sunlight, but from the sting of humiliation. He looked down at his guitar case, which now contained $7 because he'd added more of his own money to reduce his sense of failure. He was considering packing up and abandoning his dream when something unexpected happened. He heard applause. Michael looked up from his guitar. Standing approximately 15 feet away was a man in an expensive tailored suit wearing dark sunglasses. The man stood motionless, clapping slowly and deliberately. Michael's immediate instinct was that the man was mocking him. However, the man continued clapping while walking closer, then removed his sunglasses and smiled. Michael's breath caught in his throat. He recognized that face immediately from the album covers in his father's collection, from the movie posters he'd seen, from the television appearances he'd watched. This was Dean Martin. Dean approached until he stood just 3 feet away from Michael. He observed the guitar case containing $7, Michael's flushed face, and his trembling hands. Then he spoke. "How long have you been standing out here, kid?" Michael's voice cracked as he answered. 2 hours. 2 hours for $7? That's extremely rough, Dean observed. He gestured toward the guitar. "Do you know the song, Everybody Loves Somebody?" "Yeah, I know it," Michael replied. "Play for me. I want to hear your interpretation." Dean instructed. "What?" Michael asked, uncertain he'd heard correctly. "Play the song." "I'm asking to hear how you perform it," Dean repeated. Michael's hand shook so intensely that he could barely grip the guitar properly. Yet he began to play. Remarkably, perhaps because Dean Martin was standing just 3 feet away, Michael's voice remained steady this time. It wasn't technically perfect or exceptionally smooth, but it contained genuine authenticity. Dean listened attentively, nodding occasionally. When the song concluded, Dean smiled appreciatively. "You're hitting a flat note on the bridge, and your G chord needs adjustment. However, you possess something valuable." "I do." Michael asked hopefully. "Absolutely. You genuinely care about this music. I can hear it in every note. Most performers out here are simply trying to earn rent money. You're attempting to prove something greater." Michael looked downward. "My father wanted to become a singer. He never had that opportunity. He passed away 3 months ago." Dean's facial expression softened noticeably. "What was your father's name?" "Anthony. Anthony Castellano." Dean paused thoughtfully before responding. "Anthony Castellano. That's an excellent name for a singer. He enjoyed your music. He played your records every Sunday." Dean nodded slowly. "Then we're not going to disappoint him, are we?" "What do you mean?" Michael asked, confused. Dean removed his sunglasses and set them carefully on Michael's guitar case. He rolled up his sleeves. "I'm going to sing this song with you." "Play it again." Michael was stunned. "You want to perform out here?" "Why shouldn't I? Do you have a stage? Do you have an audience?" Dean gestured at the surrounding street. "You will in approximately 10 seconds. Dean was absolutely correct. The instant people recognized Dean Martin standing on a street corner, everything changed. Vehicles slowed down. Pedestrians froze in place. Someone shouted, "Is that Dean Martin?" Within 30 seconds, a crowd assembled around them. The group grew from 20 to 50 to 100 people. Michael's hands trembled so severely, he nearly dropped his guitar. Dean leaned in close, speaking only to Michael. "Ignore the crowd. Just perform for your father. Imagine it's Sunday morning. Your dad is in the kitchen. You're giving him a performance he never had the chance to deliver himself. Can you manage that?" Michael swallowed hard and nodded his agreement. "Okay, let's begin from the start. Don't rush the tempo. Let the song breathe." Dean instructed. Michael played the opening chords, and Dean Martin's voice filled Sunset Boulevard. No amplification equipment, no concert stage, simply his voice carrying naturally through the air. His tone was clear, polished, and effortless. The assembled crowd grew silent, completely transfixed. Dean performed the first verse by himself. Then he paused, looked directly at Michael, and nodded encouragingly. "Your turn." Michael's voice trembled on the opening line, but Dean didn't overshadow him. Instead, Dean continued singing beneath Michael's voice, providing support and encouragement. By the second verse, Michael's voice stabilized. By the chorus, he was genuinely singing rather than merely performing or pretending. The crowd began clapping rhythmically along with the music. When the final notes faded, Sunset Boulevard erupted in applause, cheering, and whistling. Michael stood frozen in astonishment. Dean grinned widely. "Not too bad, kid. You nailed that high note perfectly this time." The crowd pressed forward with endless questions and requests. Dean, what brings you here? Would you sign this autograph? Can you sing another song?" Dean disregarded their appeals and turned his attention back to Michael. "Do you have a pen?" Michael fumbled in his pocket and produced a pen. Dean picked up a discarded napkin from someone's lunch and wrote something on it, then handed it to Michael. The napkin contained a phone number. "That's my manager, Hank Santa. Call him tomorrow. Tell him I referred you. He'll arrange for you to meet with a professional vocal coach. A genuine coach, not some fraud." Michael stared at the napkin in disbelief. "I cannot afford to pay for that." "You won't be paying. I will cover the expenses." Dean explained. "But why would you do that?" Michael asked. Dean replaced his sunglasses. "Because 30 years ago, I was exactly like you. I was in Steubenville, Ohio, performing in bars for tips, having bottles thrown at me, and a man called Sammy Watkins offered me an opportunity. He financed my first genuine performance opportunity. He educated me in proper breathing techniques, how to sustain notes effectively, how to command a room." Dean paused reflectively. "I never had the opportunity to express my gratitude to him. He died before I achieved success. Therefore, I'm honoring his memory by assisting you." Michael's eyes filled with tears. "Mr. Martin, Call me Dean and please stop crying. You'll frighten away your audience," Dean interrupted with humor. Dean was right. The crowd remained, waiting expectantly. Dean raised his voice to address them. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Michael Castellano. He will continue performing, and I encourage you to stay and listen. This young man has an exceptional future ahead." Then Dean performed an unexpected gesture. He reached into his jacket pocket, retrieved his wallet, extracted a $100 bill, and dropped it into Michael's guitar case. The crowd gasped collectively. Following Dean's example, people began contributing. $5 bills, $10 bills, $20 bills, they poured into the case. Within 2 minutes, the guitar case overflowed with cash. Dean walked toward his automobile, stopped, and turned back one final time. "Michael, one additional thing. Yes, your father would definitely be proud of you." Then Dean Martin entered his Cadillac and drove away. Michael remained standing for approximately 10 more minutes, too overwhelmed by emotion to move. Once he eventually counted the money accumulated in his guitar case, the total was exactly $347. Michael called Dean's manager the following day. Hank Santacola answered on the second ring. "You must be the young man Dean mentioned to me." "Yes, sir," Michael confirmed. "Arrive at Capitol Records tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning. A vocal coach will be expecting you," Hank instructed. Michael appeared early, carrying significant nervousness. The vocal coach, a woman named Marie Stevens who had trained numerous Hollywood performers, listened to Michael sing once through. Then she delivered her assessment. "You're unrefined, but you possess the capacity to improve significantly. We'll begin with foundational breath control techniques." Michael trained consistently for the subsequent 6 months, attending sessions 3 times weekly. Dean Martin personally financed all expenses without Michael needing to contribute anything. Interestingly, Dean never attended the training sessions himself, never requested progress reports, and never asked for updates. However, one afternoon, Marie mentioned casually, "Dean contacted me approximately once monthly to inquire about your development. He never provides instruction or criticism, simply wants confirmation that you're continuing to work diligently." Michael never achieved superstar status. He didn't sell millions of recordings, didn't perform in Las Vegas headlining shows, and didn't become the next Dean Martin. However, he did build a sustainable career. Michael performed in nightclubs, small concert venues, wedding receptions, and cruise ships. He opened for established performers at various events. He earned a respectable living by doing something his father never could accomplish. Throughout his entire performing career, every single performance began identically, with that Amore, performed to honor both his deceased father and the man who stopped his car on Sunset Boulevard to assist a frightened teenager. Dean Martin passed away on Christmas morning in 1995. Michael was 50 years old at that time, still actively performing and working. He chose not to attend the funeral service, believing he didn't belong there. After all, they'd only spent approximately 12 minutes together on a street corner. Nevertheless, Michael sent flowers with an accompanying message. "Dean, you once told me my father would be proud of me. You were mistaken about that. Instead, he would be grateful because of your intervention. His dream didn't perish when he did. It continued living through me. I'm eternally grateful that you decided to stop your automobile that particular day. Thank you for recognizing my potential when absolutely nobody else could see it." 3 months following Dean's death, Michael received an unexpected package. There was no return address, simply his name written on the exterior. Inside was a record album, Dean Martin's Greatest Hits compilation. Included was a handwritten note in Dean's own handwriting. "Michael, I discovered this album in my office recently. I believe you should possess it. Continue singing for your father. When you eventually finish performing yourself, make certain to teach another frightened young musician how to execute that high note correctly. That represents how we demonstrate our appreciation. Sincerely, Dean." The note was dated December 20th, 1995, just 5 days before Dean died. Michael displays that record album in a protective frame on his wall, positioned directly adjacent to his father's notebook. These 2 objects represent something profound. 2 men who never actually met in person, yet both believe in an identical principle, that dreams never truly disappear. They simply wait for someone courageous enough to provide them with expression and voice. This narrative isn't fundamentally about celebrity, wealth, or fame. It's fundamentally about appearing for someone who is making a genuine effort. Dean Martin achieved recognition as one of the globe's biggest entertainment stars. He possessed no obligation to stop his vehicle. He didn't have to perform publicly with an anxious teenager. He didn't have to finance vocal instruction. He didn't have to compose encouraging correspondence. He didn't have to invest emotional energy in a stranger's aspirations. Yet he chose to perform all these actions. He made this choice because he vividly remembered what it felt like to experience ridicule, to receive messages that he wasn't sufficiently talented, to perform for audiences who disregarded his efforts. When Dean observed that identical apprehension in a 17-year-old boy performing on Sunset Boulevard, he didn't perceive failure. He recognized possibility. Not because Michael possessed exceptional technical ability, but because Michael genuinely cared about his performance. Authentic, profound caring represents something considerably scarcer than innate talent. Dean Martin stopped his vehicle that particular day because somebody had previously stopped for him. Michael Castellano allocated the remainder of his life to stopping for additional frightened young performers. That's not merely charitable giving. That's the development of legacy. That's how impact multiplies through generations, one individual assisting another, each remembering what it felt like to struggle, each choosing to be the person who didn't keep driving past.